My best friend backstabbed me for his own gain, but why did fate make me the one who rose while he fell apart? I stood at the window of my corner office, looking down at the city streets where I used to sleep in my car, and watched the man who stole my life's work walk out of the building across the street carrying a cardboard box. At 29, I was the CEO of the most respected creative agency in the state, and Ben, the best friend who had left me for dead to build his own empire, was officially bankrupt. To understand why this moment felt less like victory and more like a tragic funeral, you have to understand who Ben was to me. We weren't just business partners, we were brothers in everything but blood since we were 6 years old. We shared peanut butter sandwiches in elementary school, dorm rooms in college, and eventually, the dream of escaping our small, dusty hometown. Ben was the charisma. He was the guy who could talk a police officer out of a speeding ticket or convince a bartender to give us free rounds just because he had a good vibe. I was the engine. I was the one up at 3 a.m. coding, designing, and building the actual product we were selling. It was a perfect balance, or so I thought. I provided the substance, he provided the shine. Have you ever loved a friend so much that you ignored the red flags waving right in your face? Looking back, the signs were there. Ben always had a way of cutting corners. In college, he'd copy my notes and get a better grade because he presented them better. He'd borrow money and forget to pay it back, laughing it off with a smile that made you feel petty for even asking. I always told myself that was just Ben. He was a visionary, I told myself. Visionaries are messy. We launched our startup, Nexus, when we were 25. It was my brainchild, a software platform that streamlined logistics for small businesses. I had spent 2 years writing the code, surviving on instant noodles and cheap energy drinks. Ben handled the investors and the clients. For the first year, it was magic. We were growing. We were the next big thing. I was so buried in the back-end development that I didn't pay attention to the paperwork. I trusted Ben. Why wouldn't I? He was the godfather to my non-existent children. He was the guy who drove me to the hospital when I broke my leg. Then came the Titan deal. It was a buyout offer from a massive tech conglomerate. It was enough money to set us both up for life. I remember the night we celebrated. Ben poured the champagne, his eyes glittering with something I mistook for joy but now recognize as greed. The next morning, I walked into our shared office space, and my keycard didn't work. I thought it was a glitch. I called Ben, straight to voicemail. I called our lawyer. He sounded uncomfortable. He told me that Nexus didn't technically exist anymore. The assets, the code, the client list, everything had been transferred to a new entity called Prime Systems. Solely owned by Ben, just hours before the buyout was finalized. Because I had been busy coding, I had let Ben handle the incorporation documents years ago. I had signed things without reading them. I had signed away my rights to my own creation. Ben hadn't just sold the company, he had erased me from it. He took the check, the credit, and the future. The devastation wasn't just financial, it was existential. I lost my apartment. I lost my reputation because Ben spun a narrative that I was unstable and difficult to work with to explain my sudden absence. He was the golden boy, the young genius who had sold his company for millions. I was the nobody sleeping in a Honda Civic parked behind a 24-hour gym. I remember lying in the backseat, staring at the fabric of the car roof, feeling the darkness so heavy I couldn't breathe. It wasn't just the betrayal, it was the stupidity. I felt like a fool. I had handed him the knife, exposed my back, and pointed to the exact spot where it would hurt the most. What would you do in this situation? Would you try to sue, knowing he had all the money, or would you walk away to save your sanity? I tried to sue, but Ben had top-tier lawyers paid for with my money. They buried me in paperwork until I ran out of cash. I was 26, broke, homeless, and heartsick. The slow climb from the ashes. For 6 months, I was a ghost. I worked manual labor jobs just to eat. I refused to touch a computer. The screen reminded me of him. But fate is funny. You can't outrun who you are. One night, the owner of the warehouse where I was moving boxes mentioned he was drowning in inventory issues. His system was archaic. Without thinking, I told him I could fix it. I didn't have a laptop, so I wrote the logic out on a napkin. He looked at me, confused, and let me use the office computer after hours. I built him a system in 3 days that saved him $10,000 a month. He didn't give me millions. He gave me a bonus and referred me to his brother who owned a trucking fleet. That was the beginning. I didn't start a startup. I didn't look for investors. I didn't want fame. I just wanted to work. I started a consultancy called Ironclad. The name was a promise to myself. No smoke, no mirrors, just rock-solid results. I worked differently this time. I read every contract 3 times. I retained full ownership. I didn't look for a face for the company. I forced myself to step into the light. I learned to speak to clients. I learned to sell. I realized that by hiding behind Ben all those years, I had crippled my own growth. His betrayal forced me to grow the muscles I had let atrophy. While I was building Ironclad, brick by brick, Ben was living the high life. I saw him on social media. He was traveling to Dubai, buying sports cars, dating models. He started a new venture, Vanguard, with the money he stole. It was flashy. It was everywhere. But here is where the fate part comes in. Ben had the money, but he didn't have the engine. He didn't have me. He hired cheap developers to build his vision, treating them like disposable tools because that's how he viewed people. He overpromised to investors because he was used to me pulling miracles out of thin air to save him. Without the substance to back up his charisma, his lies started to compound. I heard whispers in the industry. Vanguard was buggy, the data wasn't secure, clients were unhappy, Ben was firing people left and right, blaming everyone but himself. He was frantically pivoting, trying to buy success, but you can't buy the soul of a product. 3 years after the betrayal, my company, Ironclad, was approached for a massive government contract. It was boring, unsexy work, securing municipal databases, but it was lucrative and stable. I walked into the bidding meeting, and there he was. Ben looked eroded. He was 29, like me, but he looked 40. His skin was gray, his eyes were darting around the room, and that famous charm felt frantic and sweaty. He was pitching Vanguard for the same contract. It was the first time we had been in the same room since he stole my life. My heart hammered against my ribs, but my hands were steady. I expected to feel rage. I expected to want to scream. Instead, I felt pity. He started his presentation. It was all buzzwords. Synergy, AI-driven, cloud native. It was a beautiful wrapper around an empty box. When the technical leads asked him specific questions about encryption protocols, he stumbled. He tried to laugh it off. He tried to charm them. The room remained silent. Then it was my turn. I didn't have a flashy slideshow. I opened my laptop and showed them the code. I showed them the architecture. I answered every question with facts. I didn't try to sell them a dream, I sold them a solution. We got the contract. That contract was Ben's last hope. He had leveraged everything, his house, his car, his reputation, on keeping Vanguard afloat. When the news broke that he lost the bid, the house of cards collapsed. Whistleblowers came forward. It turned out Ben had been falsifying user numbers to keep investors happy. He had been using new investment money to pay off old debts, a classic Ponzi scheme structure born out of desperation. That leads me back to the window. I watched him walk out with that box. He wasn't going to a new startup. He was going to court. He was facing fraud charges. The gain he had stabbed me for had evaporated because it wasn't earned. It was stolen, and stolen success is like holding sand. The tighter you squeeze, the faster it slips away. I used to ask the universe, why me? Why did I have to suffer? Why did the good guy lose? But now, standing here, I realize I didn't lose. If Ben hadn't betrayed me, I would still be the guy hiding in the back room, afraid of the spotlight, letting someone else control my destiny. I would be rich, sure, but I would be weak. I would be dependent on a man who didn't respect me. The betrayal stripped me of everything external, my money, my house, my status, and forced me to find out what was left. And what was left was resilience. What was left was talent. What was left was integrity. Ben, on the other hand, was given everything he wanted. He got the money, he got the fame, and because he didn't have to work for it, because he stole the foundation instead of building it, he never developed the strength to hold it up. The weight of his own success crushed him. Have you ever considered that your worst enemy might have actually been the catalyst for your greatest growth? I didn't rise despite his betrayal. I rose because of it. He pushed me off the cliff, forcing me to realize I could fly, while he stood on the edge, weighed down by the gold he stole, until the ground crumbled beneath him. I actually went down to the street that day. I don't know why. Maybe I needed closure. Ben saw me. He stopped on the sidewalk, clutching his box. He looked at my suit, then at the building behind me with my company's logo on the glass. For a second, I thought he might yell, or cry, or maybe try to summon that old fake charm. He just looked at me and said, simply, that he was tired. He looked like a man who had been running a marathon in the wrong direction. I wanted to hate him. I wanted to tell him he deserved it. But looking at the wreckage of his life, I realized that hate is an expensive emotion, and he had already cost me enough. I nodded at him, turned around, and walked back into the lobby of the building I owned. I took the elevator up, not to the top floor to look down on people, but to my desk to get back to work. Life has a way of balancing the scales, even if it takes years. Shortcuts are seductive. Betrayal seems like a fast track to the top. But the universe has a strict policy. You cannot keep what you do not earn. I learned that character isn't just a moral concept, it's a survival strategy. My integrity was the only thing Ben couldn't steal, and it turned out to be the only thing that mattered. So, if you are going through hell right now because someone you trusted broke you, listen to me, do not let them turn you into a victim. Do not let them make you bitter. Let them make you better. Let them take the heavy baggage of the easy way out, while you do the hard work of rebuilding. Because one day, you will be standing at the window, and you will see them walking away with a cardboard box, and you will realize that they didn't bury you. They planted you. What do you think? Is success the best revenge, or is forgiveness the only way to truly be free? If this story resonated with you, or if you've ever had to rebuild your life from scratch, please like, share, and subscribe. Let me know in the comments, what is the biggest betrayal you've ever overcome, and how did it change you? I read every single story. Stay strong.